good friends? What's good, friends? My name is Dr. Ryan Terrell Sykes Sensei. I'm super stoked to be here with my good friend, Dr. Jonathan Chung, who's going to run us through some ergonomics and performance stuff. Welcome to, I think this is the third or fourth
Mhm.
presentation for Neuropia. Thank you for having us, Neuroptima. Sorry, excuse me. This is Dr. Jonathan Chung. He's worked with gamers and teams from around the world, including Fnatic, Shopify Rebellion, Toronto Ultra, now Koi, and Toronto Defiant. He's also provided on-site performance coaching and rehab at support at the last EWC in 2025 to provide support to any competing team or player. As a result, he's probably worked with your favorite pro to get them back to performing their best. He is currently located in Toronto, providing performance and injury coaching support to local teams in person and other clients around the world virtually. So if you want to work with him, hit him up. Um, but yeah, take it away, Jonathan.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan, for the amazing intro. Uh, we're going to cover performance ergonomics today. The whole idea here is that we want your setup to work for you and make your life easier. And if there's any questions, put up your hand. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat. Ryan, if you don't mind helping me, if I missed something or I missed somebody's message, just ping me and I'll make sure to double check. And we'll get rolling. Okay. We just talked about some of the teams I've worked with, some of the pros, and we're going to cover 6 things today, plus the possible from the audience participation. If you're comfortable, we'll go over your setup, and I'll take a look and make some recommendations. If there is a lot of interest, I can see if I can try to do 2 people. We'll see how we go. Okay, now we're going to go over definitions, a really helpful analogy that puts into perspective what I'm trying to do here, case studies so you can understand what we're after, how do we apply it, some examples and principles, because I'm always after what are the fundamental things that we can boil down this topic into that you can then use at home. Performance ergonomics, let's break it down. Ergonomics is really what is a posture that puts the least load on your body for the activity that you're doing. For example, if you're standing, when you're typing, it's going to take more effort than when you're sitting, but there's that performance aspect that we're looking at here, which is how effectively can you do that action. And when you put them together, what we're looking at is what postures and positions create the least load but the most efficiency, the most efficacy. How can we make every impactful movement more effective and easier? Sometimes this is impossible. Sometimes maybe people have optimized it as well as you can. But if there is any stuff left on the table, we want to get after it. Okay. Now, the cup of water analogy. This one's really interesting because it puts into context that least amount of effort, most amount of efficacy. I want you to think of water in the cup as effort, and it's a resource, which means that the amount of water in your cup is how much effort you have, how much you can do at any given moment. And your total cup size is how much capacity you have for effort. If you have a really, really big cup, you can do a lot more. If you have a small cup, you can't do as much. And the size of your cup is genetic, and then also how much training you've done. If you've only been playing for a little while, you can probably only play for 30 minutes before you run out of water. But if you play a lot and you can play a lot more, then you might be able to do a 12-hour session. Now, each time you do something, you take a sip and you take water out of the cup. If you do something that's not very difficult, say walk around the block, that's a small sip. But if you're going for a big grocery run, you got to do a farmer's carry holding like 25-pound bags on the way back, that's a big sip. And the bigger sip, the more water you take out. The good thing, though, is that water comes back, effort comes back when you recover. Things like sleep, rest, movement, fulfilling activities, that's what fills up your cup. And this is important because when your cup is empty, your risk of injury, burnout, bad things happening is higher. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to happen. Being tired and then doing something doesn't mean you're going to die. It just means that it might take more effort or that your risk of injury is always higher. You always get injured when I work with people in person. You always get injured and hurt when you're tired and then you try to have to do something difficult, right? It's never when you're prepared, when you're ready. It's always when you're not thinking. Now, the performance ergonomic side of it is trying to make each sip as small as possible while still being effective. Let's look at a case study. This is interactive, so I want you guys to follow along with me. I was working with a computer engineer who had pain with typing. and it was particularly when he pressed his backspace key. And as you can tell, they're hammering the late key here, but I thought the GIF is too funny to give up. And for most people, right, we start off on the home row back here, and then we reach for the backspace key. What he was doing was, instead of reaching with any other finger, he would use his ring finger and he would keep his wrist planted. And he would go like this. And if I'm exaggerating here, but it actually looked more like this. And if you try to do this a few times, I'm going to guess that for most people, it doesn't feel great after the first few. And what that meant was he was just doing this in a way that exaggerated and exacerbated his problems. And the reason why is because when you're at your end range, it's a bigger set. It takes more energy. It takes more work. You have less control. You always have the most amount of control and the most resilience, and you take smaller sips when you're in the middle of a range. For example, when you're doing a bicep curl, you have the most strength when you're like this, not when you're like this or when you're like this. And what he was doing is he was constantly trying to do a bicep curl like this, and it just wasn't the right thing to do. It was bugging him a lot. Did anybody try it? How did that feel? I see somebody typing. I'm guessing for most people, probably not great. And what do we do about it? There's a few options. Yep, it doesn't feel great. No, it's not nice. Now, we could strengthen him up, build up more range of motion, right? Maybe instead of having to hammer his end range, it's a little bit easier. But the problem is you only have so much range at your wrist. You have about 20 to 25 to 30 degrees going this way and about 35 to 45 going this way. And it adds up over time. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Rebirth, you're exactly right. It's in short bursts, but he was doing it all the time. And just over weeks and months of this happening, it just got more and more sensitive and more painful, which is why we had to change it. Now, we have two other options besides this, which is we have let me just set myself up here. You can reach with his pinky finger, which meant that he didn't have to change things too much. You could just reach like this, or he could still hit with the ring finger, but now he moves his elbow a little bit so that he doesn't have to plant his wrist as much. And I forget which of the two or three we chose. He was doing one regardless, just to set ourselves up for success, but he chose one of two or three, and suddenly we had no issues. He was pain-free around 2 weeks, no change in productivity or performance, and it was good work. It was good work. It was honestly one of the fastest fixes I've ever had, which is really cool. Now, I'm guessing most of you don't push your backspace button like that, which means what would be a more relevant way we could apply it? Now, for Valorant and for a lot of FPSs, DPI is always a huge topic because most pros tend to play with low DPI, and I've had some players come from different games and they went from a high DPI to a low DPI. And the problem is you have to move your wrist a lot when you're doing low DPI. Sorry, more wrist when you're playing high DPI, but when you play low DPI, you have to use your shoulder. You have to use your shoulder more. And what happened was I've had a lot of people come to me and they just keep using their wrist, but they still have a low DPI, which means that they're trying to reach the same amount with just the wrist. And they're hammering, again, that end range, which is not super comfortable. And they're changing that small sip into a big sip, which means, what should we do? Honestly, the right answer is incorporate more shoulder, right? If you're doing more range of motion anatomically, if you're already maxed out, it's not going to help you very much by building up even more. You've already hit your natural amount, and building it up more is just waste of time. The better thing is to use your shoulder. And what that does is suddenly, instead of using just your wrist, you're offloading it, and you're now incorporating your shoulder much more natural. You're getting full range, and you're changing that big sip back into a small sip. For most of you, this is probably really, really basic stuff. Yes, I can't move my mouse enough. You should move your shoulder, but you'd be surprised. I've had some people, even some people who are very, very good at the game, struggle with this one. which is why low-hanging fruit, make sure you pluck it. There are some other considerations whenever you're making a change like this. When you're in season, performance is the priority, and even if it hurts, I don't want to change your ergonomics, your settings, your movement habits too much, because then it drops your performance. Especially if you're at a tournament or something. When I was working at EWC and somebody came to me with pain, it was never, okay, we got to change this right away, because they're in a competition. They're playing for potentially millions of dollars. It's not the time. The other side is, how much discomfort can you handle? Whenever you make a change like this, it's gonna be worse for a while before it gets better. Your performance isn't gonna be as good. You might miss more shots. It might not be as comfortable, but it's all dependent on how much performance do you want. If you want to have the most optimal setup, then if it's farther away from what you currently have, then it's going to take more time to adjust. If you're really close, then it might be a little bit less, and then it's a little bit easier. And the last thing here is, when you're dealing with a video game, you can only do as much as what the game engine allows you to. For example, a classic one for me is when you're playing League of Legends. I don't know how many people are comfortable with that one or familiar with that one. When you play a champion called Zeri, instead of using your stronger fingers on your mouse, you have to start using your pinky a ton. And ideally, what you do is you swap this back to the finger that you would normally use, but they don't allow you to do that in the game. And you have to kind of go into the game files itself to change it, which is a whole other thing. And if you're not comfortable with that, then it's a bit more difficult. Okay, we're going to go over some examples here. And keep in mind that when you're looking at performance ergonomics, you got to make sure the ergonomics part is already up to standard. If your feet aren't on the ground, if you're lying in bed right now, there's no judgment, by the way. If your feet are on the ground, your knees are at 90 degrees, the back of your chair isn't hitting your knees, you can still sit to the back of the chair and have support at the low back. You can see this guy needs way more support up here. This chair is actually kind of terrible, but the rest of his stuff isn't too bad. He's got a 90-degree here at the elbow, roughly. His arm doesn't look like it's too flared out, which is also good. His wrist is relatively straight, not insane. And let's see, the one thing here I would also really want to change is that his laptop is on desk. Not great. It should be raised up so that the top of the monitor is level with his eyes, but you can tell he's at an unfortunate office job, so not the best. Okay. Next, the laziest, low ergo, high performance would be the best then. Yeah, exactly. We want to work hard outside of it, so then when you have your setup, you don't have to work as hard. That's the whole idea. Julian, that's a good point. This is another thing to mention, is that ergonomics is also, it's the posture that you can use for the most amount of time without having to change position. But actually, what we're seeing in the research is that changing your position the most, things like interrupted sitting, where you just move your position around, is actually the best. And it gives you the best results, because what your body doesn't like is staying in one position for a long time. And that means that I've had people sit like this sometimes, and I've actually encouraged it, because they were sitting like this for 2 hours before that, and they needed a break, which means, yes, it's actually okay to change your posture. As long as you're not staying in an atrocious posture for a long amount of time, then you're fine. Okay. Tension control while aiming is a classic here. I think everybody's done the death grip before. And the thing is, you should use tension as a resource. And when you're flicking, yes, you should use as much muscle as you can. Flick really, really hard, go fast. But then when you're doing the micro adjustments, your hand should be relaxed. When you're actually clicking your mouse, it should be relaxed. For example, when you're holding an angle, dude, you don't need maximum tension. You should be relaxed, because just like when your bicep works the strongest, when it's at that middle ground, the sweet spot, you actually have the most control and the most speed when you have some tension, but not too much, not too little. The Goldilocks principle is strong with a lot of these things. Okay. The keybinds on PC is an interesting one. I personally have a split keyboard, which is a little crazy. Hold on, I'll show you. So my keyboard actually looks like this. And I then think that it's really important when you're playing to, if I'm using something where I have to use my uh, hand to move, I want to be able to keep these three fingers on the movement keys. For example, if I have to go to the right, but I have to press E, R, or F to also activate the ability, that means I have to use two inputs on the same finger really, really close together. And it's always going to be more smooth if I have to just hit, for example, the back button on my mouse before anything else happens. It's just more smooth. It's easier. And I really encourage you, if you are trying to optimize things for keybinds, think about which abilities use the most, which abilities have to. I don't use a vertical mouse. I have the G502X, but I really, really like when I can feel that nice flow. And if I have to move, I want the input to be on the other side as well. Okay. It looked like there were some questions. Yes, Rebirth, that's exactly. Yeah, smart guy. Smart guy. Because that way, when you have your abilities on your mouse, suddenly you can use the movement abilities, your movement really, really easily. Yes. Okay. So Rebirth is saying that for Reyna, he uses dismiss and heal on the mouse buttons. Great, because you want to be able to move as you're doing those things. Yes, exactly, exactly. Nate just brought that up too. When he was competing in Fortnite, not being able to build a cone and move to the right at the same time because of his vines. Exactly, right? You want to be able to, especially for a moving game like Fortnite, you want to be able to move without having to take your hands off your WASD keys, which means that moving it onto a different thing, really, really, really helpful. Julian, to the vertical mouse, my thoughts on vertical mice are they just shift which muscles you're using, which kind of like a cast, right? Your cast will force you to use different muscles to allow the ones that are injured to heal. The problem is that if you have the same habits, you keep pushing yourself the same amount with the vertical mouse, you keep loading things the same amount, you're just going to wind up with problems in different muscles. And for some people, they can get away with it, and using vertical mouse fixes most of the problems. But if you don't deal with the underlying lack of water, your capacity is just too low, then you have issues. Yeah. Yep. Kami, that's another great example. You can put your abilities closer to your thumb because that way you can still use WASD, but then your thumb can then handle everything else. It's really a habit thing. Whatever you like, go for it. Okay. And the same process is for paddles or back buttons. Yeah, I used to play COD a little bit, and I had to claw to try to do some of the tack slides and stuff. And as soon as I got back buttons, I was like, oh, this is so much easier. Instead of having to contort my hand, I could just push a button on the back and then one on the front, and it was great. Super easy. Yep. Yep. Mouse wheel for disc and heel orb is a good one. Claw, yeah. Claw hurts, man. I'm too much of an unk to play claw now. I need back buttons. Give me the back buttons. Okay. Uh, this is a classic one for a lot of FPS players. I rarely see a Val Pro or a Pro in any FPS with a full size anymore. It's just too big. And it limits how much you can move your mouse, which is why having a shortened or I've actually never seen a Pro use a Tartarus before. As you can tell, I use the crazy one here. And what that means is I can just move my right side out of the way, and I can just have a nice, beautiful space on the right with my mouse, which feels really comfortable for me. Yeah, claw is hard. I think it gives you a lot of control, but it has a baseline higher level of tension, which means that if your hand isn't ready for it, it can cause you problems. You can definitely work up to it and get more comfortable and get better with it, but it takes a bit of time. Okay. Yeah, TKL is good. 60% is probably my favorite too, honestly. The Wooting keyboard is actually really interesting for a whole host of other reasons. Okay, and this is a classic one when you use a controller. If you don't have some support under your arms, grab some. Whether that means you are using a pillow underneath your hands, or use your armrests, or you just rest it in your lap, that's all good. But give yourself some support, because it means then that your arms don't have to work as hard, and all that extra energy, that effort, isn't going to holding up your controller. It's going to inputting different things into the game that you need to win. Same thing for a keyboard. If you have to float your wrist, and some people tend to have a problem with extension, where when your wrist is lifted up, it's a little bit more uncomfortable. And having your wrist rest straightens it out, makes it more comfortable, more ergonomic, more of a small sip as opposed to a big sip is what I'm saying. Yes, wrist rest is definitely meta. I personally haven't used too much of the Carpio or the mouse the mouse wrist rests. I prefer to just go for a shorter mouse in that case instead. But I've heard some people and some patients really like it. Try it. My rule is always try it out. If you like it, then go for it. I haven't used these a ton, the clip on wrist rests, just because I find they're less stable. And the last thing you want is when you're playing for it to fall off the table, and the next thing you know, it's just, well, I gotta stop the game, pick it up, and then throw it back on there. Not great. I am also an Ergomice believer. I love the G502X. I used to use the G502 for years, and it's just a really comfortable shape for me. I know some people love having like I know a lot of pros use G Pro. That's a really common one, and there's all the Final Mouse and all those other crazy ones too. Okay, the principles behind all of these things, I like to break it down because obviously some of these things are really specific, and they have to be specific to you. The first question you want to ask yourself is, what do you wish was easier? In game, is there any moment like the cones with Fortnite? What do you wish was easier because you want to optimize how you're playing the game? This is an ongoing thing, and this will likely change with patches. With if you pick up a new agent, there's all kinds of stuff going on here. But you're the expert on your own game, and that's why I want you to ask the question of yourself, because I won't always know. But you should have an idea about where you want to get better. Interesting. Okay. Interesting new mouse. I haven't seen that one before, the Dragonfly R1 Pro. Cool. But there are some other principles that are generally quite applicable to most people, which is sequential input should be on different digits or thumbs. Some of you already mentioned you felt this before when you've changed abilities from the left side of the keyboard onto either the thumb or the mouse. Great ideas, whatever works for you, but you want to be able to not have to use the same digit or limb for the same input. Cool, good. I'm glad the mouse fits your hands better. That's great, because that's all you want. There are some calculators out there that help you pick something that should work well, but I usually encourage people to, if you can, try the mouse out for a week or so, see if you like it, and you'll know by then if it's comfortable or not. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind that could be a guiding principle here is the most common actions should be on the strongest parts of your body. Like with Zeri, if you have to click all the time with your pinky, not great. But if you have to click all the time with your pointer finger, that's easy. You want them to be on the things that can handle the most load, because that turns a big sip into a small sip. And for most people, that's thumbs and their pointer and ring fingers, and the shoulders. This is a really basic one, but your setup should support you. If you have a comfortable position, ideally you want to build your setup around that. Having more support under your arms is great when you're playing with games. Having something to sit on is really good. Making sure your feet can hit the floor, all those things make a big difference. And this also falls into the wrist rest category. This falls into the pillow under the controller category, all those things. And the linking principle here is that stability and support are king. Being able to rest your arms so that they don't have to hold themselves up means that you have more energy to do other things in game. And this is really tied to adjustability. You can see the two guys in the GIF, very different people. I think this is Team Secret. I'm not sure what game, but I think it's Team Secret. They're showing that the armrests on this Secret Lab chair, I think it is, they can move. This is not, I'm not sponsored by Secret Lab, by the way, but it just happens to be in the GIF. But being able to move your armrests a lot helps, because then different people can use the same piece of equipment and still have the same support. And like I mentioned before, the less work you have to do to support your body, the more effort you can put into the things that matter, which are clicking heads, moving around, actually playing the game. One thing to keep in mind is that I'm sure when you change your keybinds, tried out something new, it was a bit annoying in the beginning. You probably flubbed a few times, especially in clutch situations, but the cool thing is that it gets better. And it means that if you remember that what you're doing it for, then suddenly the investment doesn't seem as bad. Okay, let's try out some things. Oh, okay, I'll answer Nate's question first. Is Herman Miller as good as their marketing says? I've used a lot of their chairs. I will say they are very comfortable, but I will also say they are very expensive. And especially the Logitech collab, it is extremely comfortable, but yeah, it's a lot. I think you can get great chairs that are not that price. And if you really want to try one, then I think Facebook Marketplace is a great option. I've got my chair, it's a steel case from there, and it was like a quarter of the price online, which is great. I do think you get what you pay for when it comes to chairs, but do you need to drop 2 bands on one? That's a hard one, man. I think that's a bit much. Stretches for forearm strain from aiming. It depends on where you feel it. If you feel it on this side, then doing something like this is good. If you feel strain on this side, then you want to make a fist and pull it towards you like that. Okay. This is all the principles on one page. It has my contact info if any of you want to reach out to me. I will provide this as a thing to the mods, and they can provide it to everybody here as a takeaway. Just to remind you, ask yourself what you wish was easier. Sequential inputs, different digits or limbs. The most common actions should be on the strongest parts of your body. You're set up to support you. Stability and support are king, and performance requires investment. And then the spinning Pikachu is just cute, so that's why it's there. Okay, I think Nate was interested. Anybody else want to do a performance ergonomics consult if they feel comfortable going on screen? Okay, let's see. We have Banson, we have random. Mods, you'll probably have to help me with this one. I'm gonna stop the stream here, and I'll let's see how we can do to get some people. Okay, Rebirth is okay. He has no cam. Had to switch to a laptop. Okay. Yeah, let's go with Nate was way back there. We have enough time. I've been answering questions throughout. Before we do this, then, any last minute questions, and then we'll go into I'll have some people show us their setup. What chairs do I prefer? I think of the racing style chair, Secret Lab is probably the best because it's the most adjustable. Realistically, for chairs, the best thing is the more adjustable ability, the better, which means bare minimum, you should be able to adjust the tilt back to front. You should be able to adjust what we call the seat pan depth, which is, this is the top part of the chair, this is the back. You should be able to slide this back and forth because everybody's femurs are different sizes. And the armrest should be able to at least go up, down, side to side, and ideally forward and back. Chairs that I personally really like, I personally use the Steelcase Elite V2, which is a nice chair. I've used other steel cases. They're nice. Herman Millers are quite nice, but they're expensive. Let's see. Okay, we can do, yeah, let's do that. How about this? If you want me to go quickly through your setup, take a picture of yourself with your setup, ideally sitting there, and I want a picture from the side, and then one from 45 degrees behind from both directions. So drop the pictures in the chat and I'll go through them. Or videos. Videos also work. I think that might work better, Julian. If people who are interested just drop pics or videos into the chat and I'll go through them. Let me think. there's a lot of good, decent chairs in the market. I haven't seen some of the more new kind of task chairs, but let me think. Is there anyone that I really like? Ultimately, to be honest, chairs are really personal, just like mice. You want to try them out, see if you like them, and then go from there. Uh, the one big thing is if you're a bigger person, then make sure you have a bigger chair. Because I'm a big guy and I need a bigger chair. Ideally, you're sitting at the desk because the setup isn't as important as you being in the setup. Okay, I'm looking at random right now. Okay, okay. Not bad. I think random's talking. Oh no, I think it's somebody in the background. Okay. All right, random. Could I get a shot of you at your setup? You're good. You're good. Yeah, I setups look pretty good. Okay, let's see. All right, off rip. I think Julian. I think you need more space for your mouse, mate. Do you have a high ass DPI? I do like how you've elevated your laptop. Good points there. Uh, One thing to consider for you is also because you're looking out the window, you want to generally match how bright your screen is to your surroundings, and having that dynamic would be great because it's helpful to not have to stare at a really bright screen or really dim screen when the outside is so variable. Okay, random. Let's see. Uh, Using your setup random. Ideally, that's the hard part because I want to see you like hands on the keyboard, looking at your computer. Yes, exactly. Yeah, the brightness it's a really common one. Uh, but yeah, if I need pictures of people at their setups, please. It'll make people's, but I mean they look pretty cool so far. Not gonna lie. I like the boom arms. Boom arms are good because it gives you more space in your desk. Who's playing VCT today, guys? I forget. I'm curious now. Yeah, Nate's got a picture coming. Okay, okay. All right, all right, random. That's very good. That's I know you. It's just you there, so it's a little bit harder. But key things here. All can I stream this? Yes. Okay. Alrighty. This is interesting here. With random, he has hit a short keyboard. Great. Big mess pad on this side. It looks like from context cues from his other stuff, his monitor is at a good height, which is one of the basics. What I would want him to do here is, I think your keyboard is at a decent rotation amount here. What we don't want is more than 30 degrees. I think it's just placed there, so I'm not. It's just something that stood out to me that it wasn't perfectly level. I don't think that's a huge deal. But what I would want if you are playing, I want you to sit closer to the desk, mate. And the reason why is because you can see over here there's some unsupported forearm. Well, if you like it that way, understandable. But I would say you'll likely feel more locked in and more comfortable if you sit closer to your desk and really tuck yourself in and push the keyboard almost underneath your monitor. Whether that's too close to your monitor, that's another consideration. But from a arm comfort standpoint, I'd want you closer to the desk. Okay. All right, that's random. Let's see. Rebirth has his stitched together. Ooh, okay. I like the RGB. Pretty. Okay, okay. Let's see. So we got one with the mouse hand, one with the keyboard hand. I would say it's hard to tell because I can't see your how far apart your arms are, but I would guess Rebirth. I would try spacing things out a little bit more. If you're doing a primarily typing task, I think your keyboard's in a good place. But if you're gaming specifically for, yes, okay, yeah, that makes more sense. You're answering some of my questions here, which is when you're when you're playing FPSs, it moves to the left. Exactly, exactly. Smart man. Because when you're playing, you want your hands roughly in front of your shoulders. And I'm guessing here that you're a little bit more tilted in, which means that for when you're playing, spread it apart. Random, can you hear me now? Can people still hear me? Okay. All right. Julian can still hear me. Okay, it might be. Okay, random. Then what I was saying for random is, I'll just type it out to him real quick, is uh, sit closer to desk for more support under forearms when playing. Okay. I'm guessing you likely do that already. I'm guessing he does that already, but just in case. Okay. Let's see here. For Banson. Oh, interesting. Okay, he's a tilted keyboard guy and a tilted monitor guy. Got you, got you. Oh, okay, and he has the desk that has the and with the pets. Very cute. Okay. 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 This is an interesting one, Banson. I think I would consider what I consider here, because there's a few things to look at. One is this amount of rotation with the keyboard. It's verging on a bit too much for me. A bit too much. And the reason why is because I find that around 30 to 45 degrees, people can start to develop some shoulder issues if they play like this so much. I would consider, if it's not a problem right now, your body can tolerate it, great. If it becomes an issue later on, I would consider reducing the angle a little bit. I wouldn't say you have to bring your arm back out to straight up and down, but consider bringing it out a little bit more. I think you're the type of player who you like to have your hands close together. It feels like your sweet spot is right here. But I wonder if you would feel that way if you actually shifted your entire body a little bit to the left with the monitor and let your right arm breathe a little bit more. It's hard to tell from this angle how close you are to the right edge of the mouse. But I would wonder if you'd like to be like this because it feels more comfortable, and shifting that little bit over here, you could keep the same amount of rotation on this side, but then your right hand would feel a little bit more free, especially when you flick to the left. Yeah. All right, that's for Banson. I'll let you think about that for a second, Banson, or give it a try. And then I see a couple more messages here from Nate. For me, it's odd when I play at my best. I've noticed that my keyboard, hand, and mouse need to be like roughly the same. Oh, okay. Yes, okay, and I see Banson had a response here. Yes, I wonder, Banson, if it's because it's hard for me to tell from this angle, but I wonder if you sit not perfectly in front of your monitor, but a little bit shifted to the right. And I wonder if you shift a little bit more to your left towards your keyboard side, whether that opens up a bit more space for you for the mouse hand. And then Random says he has a wrist rest, but he occasionally uses, but it seems to affect your performance more than help. That's common. Your keyboard isn't too high. I would say high is maybe more like 2.5 to, I don't even know how much that is, but something like this is quite high, and yours is on the lower side, which means that you don't have to kink your wrist up too much. And what this also tells me is you might be a guy who likes to move his hand around a lot with the keyboard. And when you plant more, which is what the wrist rest kind of incentivizes you to do, it makes it more, what's the word? It makes it more comfortable, because then you have to deal with the extra friction of sliding around. You could try, and I've done this with some people, is if you have an aiming sleeve or something like that that lets you skim, then you can put that on and see if that makes it feel a bit more comfortable. Okay. And then Nate, let's see here. Ooh, okay. I like the The curtain in the background. Okay, nice big mouse pad. Good. Oh, you have the nice Logitech chair. Respect, bro. That's a nice chair. Okay. 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 And then he has the secondary monitor here with the main monitor in front. And he likes to play. Okay. Interesting. This is an interesting one. Because you can see how wide your stance is here. You love to play with a lot of support, but really high up. And I can see you're leaning forward a lot, and your chest is actually resting against it. Okay, this is an interesting one, Nate, because how should I put this? Yeah, it has to be on the edge of the desk. Yeah, very wide. Okay, while you're typing, Nate, I'm going to answer random. Random, the wrist rest you might not like because if you move your hand a lot while you're playing, where on the keyboard, then the extra friction from the wrist rest can slow you down and make you feel more uncomfortable. If you have a sleeve to give you a bit more skim, a little bit more slickness, then might make things more comfortable if you want to use the wrist rest. If you feel fine without it, then I would say just stay without it. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So you want to maximize x-axis. Interesting, Nate. Right. It is true. It's not like an Overwatch or a Marvel Rivals where you have so much verticality to it. And I'm guessing with your arm up like this, it feels like, oh, okay. You know what it is, dude? It's because when you play with your arm up this high, you can do all your x-axis with just your elbow, and you probably like doing that as opposed to doing your x-axis like this, which is with your shoulder. Yeah. Okay. If you're doing it that way, then honestly, it kind of works. As crazy as it is, I think that for you, you've actually found the position that you like, and then you've supported it, which is exactly what I want. The one thing I would say is that it looks like you have to lean forward a lot. You might just need a desk that goes higher, Nate. I bet you thought I'd say, "Oh, this is terrible," but you know what? If that's how you like to play, then it kind of works. Yeah. Sinak, you use a wrist rest with your rooting. Great. If it feels comfortable, that's awesome. Because a lot of this comes down to comfort and what's personally more of a fit for you. Yeah. Yep. 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 Nate, that's where I start with a lot of people too. Is you should use your largest range of motion and then match it to what makes sense for you in game. For me, that's usually a 180 flick, and so if you're going this far, then you should match that to your DPI, because that's the most you're gonna have to flick in Valorant most of the time. Sinak, yes, I've worked with orgs as in teams in the past. Fnatic, Toronto Defiant, Toronto Ultra, Shopify Rebellion, and then a lot more pros kind of individually. I generally recommend people to do a more relaxed down shoulders position than how Nate was playing. Nate managed to make it work, and it works for him, and you don't have any pain, right, Nate? Great. Then you're fine. And you can still hit shots. If you hit shots, you're good. Yep, exactly. Yeah. I would consider working with a good T3 org. I really love this space. I want esports players to get the same kind of care that a traditional sports player would, because the crazy thing is, like, people retire before 30, but LeBron James is playing at 40, 41, something insane like that. I want players to retire because they want to, not because they feel like they have to. I do think part of the issue, and Ryan can probably talk to this too, is I think burnout is honestly a bigger problem than the physical side. But that's honestly, that could be a whole other talk, boys. Desk height, yes, I think trying a little bit higher might be good because that way you don't have to lean forward as much. Nate. Okay. Keep the questions coming, guys. And if you have other setups that you want me to take a look at, let me know. I think I covered everybody's setup so far. I do appreciate the natural light in Julian's. That's nice. I do like that. The chair looks pretty good too. So you can see how this is adjustable. That's good. And the other rough thing that I look for is if you're not using the desk to support you, then the height of the armrest should be roughly the same height as your desk. Okay. Yeah, screens in darkness is hot. Oh, yes, Naki just got a performance coach for the first time. Awesome. That's great. It makes a huge difference, especially with esports. How many times have you heard somebody, oh, I tilted it and the match was lost? Too many times to count. And how many times have you seen somebody clutch up and just carry a game? And the cool thing is, and you can talk to Ryan about this, is that you can train that stuff. You can get better at it if you work at it. Okay. I think we've covered most things. All right. But if anybody else wants to share their some of the worst setup positions. Okay. Worst postures working with people. Okay. I think some of the worst ones are actually that's a very, very interesting question. I think generally the thing that I find creates the most problems with people is the swap from high DPI to low DPI. They try to aim with just their wrist when they need to use their shoulder, even though everything else looks okay. Because they're doing that so much, it causes pain. And I really wish I had some examples of, if I could show you something crazy, but most of the time, the interesting part is that a lot of the times people in those really, really crazy positions have trained their body basically to be used to that and to like it and to feel comfortable like that. And it means then that it's their normal. And if it's their normal and they feel good, nothing else is a problem, then I generally don't like to change things too much because there might be a really good reason for it. Maybe their space, they're limited and they can only have the stuff they have, or they can't afford to sit at a stand desk, or they can't afford a different setup. And so I don't love to make a huge deal about it because I know that money's money, guys. The one interesting one that I did see that I'll share with you is I worked with the guy once who had a keyboard tray underneath his desk. So he would play like this. So his one arm was up here and his keyboard hand was down here. And he also used his, I can't remember if he used his pointer finger, but he used his thumb on D, and then he used his WS with his middle finger and an A with his ring finger, which was kind of wild. But he had no pain with that. His pain was actually on his mouse side, which was really interesting. The Kang monitor? Okay, let me look that up. I haven't seen that in a minute. Kang monitor. Images. Okay. Interesting. Okay, this is an interesting one because clearly he really likes to be looking down, and if that's more comfortable for him, if he doesn't have pain, I don't care a ton. The big thing is if he was really rounded, then I have a bigger problem. But it looks like he just kind of tucks his chin in and looks down like this, which is not terrible. Generally, I want people to have their monitor level with their eyes. The top of the monitor should be level with the eyes. And if you kind of look at how he's looking at it, he's kind of there, which is a little crazy. From an evolutionary standpoint, having your eyes are strongest right in front of you and about 45 degrees down, which is possibly why he does that. But it's interesting. Yeah. Oh, random. Good work. We like when people do their homework. Nate, yeah, I can imagine you probably used to play like that. Sounds like you've tried to min max a little bit. Uh, okay, and then random says, I have carpal tunnel, so it hurts on occasion, and I won't play if it's bad. Anything you would recommend for that that'll help minimize the sometimes? That one is, I'm sorry, random. I don't have enough time to go through it. If you reach out to me afterwards, then we can sort something out. But I don't love. I want to give you the due diligence, right? I want to make sure I know exactly what's going on before I give you recommendations for something like that. So reach out to me, okay? DM me and we'll talk. Yeah. All right. Saya player. Yeah. Yeah. And the crazy thing is that if it's working for someone like Saya player who has a really crazy position, but it works and they kind of like it, then I don't have a big deal with it. Yes, I've seen Saya player before. Yes, yes, yes. He probably kind of like Nate likes to flick like this, bicep, tricep, as opposed to shoulder, and that's totally fine. As long as it works for him, he doesn't have pain. I really don't care. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of those times guys have adapted for whatever they've been doing before and they just like it. Ah, okay. Let's see. Nate, if you GM me, I can also give you some help with the wrist stuff because I don't like when people have wrist issues. It's kind of my bread and butter. Okay. Sanok had a question about a correlation between T1 and lower tier pros in terms of their ergonomics. Is there any performance benefits on average? I think what you're asking is, do people with better ergonomics play better generally? And I would say yes, because what they've done is they've optimized their play for themselves. And honestly, like I talked about before, ergonomics are also about putting things into positions that take the least amount of load. And it's easier to flick when you're here versus than when you're trying to flick from here to the right. If I'm trying to flick from here to here and I'm trying to go right, I have way more space. I'm way quicker. If I'm trying to flick from here and try to go there, I just don't have as much room. I can't generate as much force. And I would say they're like, I haven't studied this, but off the dome, I would say yes. But I also think pros tend to do what works well for them, like the Saya players, like the Nates, like the Kangs. They find something that works well for them, and if their body is prepared for it, then they can get away with a lot. Just like how some people can play claw and have no problems, but if I play claw, my hand wants to fall off. Yeah. Yes, the top of the monitor should roughly be eye level. Yeah. Yeah. Laser treatment for nerves. Yeah, it can help. It can help. The research on it is okay. I would say that generally, if somebody has a nerve or wrist issue, the first thing I look for is how to strengthen it. Ryan also has a very good point. Just because a pro does it doesn't mean it's optimal for you. Like I mentioned about before, it should really be tailored to what you and your situation needs. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, this is dependent random because if you, how you should really think about it is where do you use the most space on your monitor? Because your eyes are strongest straight ahead and about 45 degrees down. And that means that if you use the main center part of your monitor more than you use the top, then having it a little bit higher makes sense. And for something like Valorant, where you're looking at the center of the screen more than the top or the bottom, then I could see the argument for having it a little bit higher. Okay, guys, we're kind of coming up on the end here. If you have any last questions, then hit me. crosswear. I love the crosswear. River, I would bring it down a little bit. I bring it down a little bit because your eyes are strongest straight forward and a little bit down. And if you bring it down, then you'll be right in the sweet spot. Okay, that's the last question, guys. Thank you so much for all the questions. This is great.
All right, were you
Oh.
answering one more? Or that was the last one.